Hey, how's it going, everybody? Another exciting week of Rocket League in action, and this time it's the Invitational event for North America, which means we're officially done with the fall split, except for the major, which will be in Rotterdam here in just about a month. This weekend, we had some pretty exciting stuff. If you guys didn't see, obviously, we talked about tiebreaker scenarios and everything else. We're doing that exact same thing this week, but for this past weekend, we had 16 teams play in the Invitational, 2 coming from a tiebreaker. Those were 26 Rising and Seoul, and then we had a bunch of teams come from the point rankings. That's what's new about this season. The third and final regional of every single split is entirely based on your overall points. There's no open qualifiers. There's no double elimination to get in. It is just straight up where do you perform, which again provides a lot of emphasis, especially long term, for the teams that go to the major, the teams that are able to qualify consistently. Those points are going to snowball moving forward. So again, a lot of teams going to be able to carry through on their results. There was essentially, I would say, probably about like 8 teams that were still in the running when it came to the major, and I'll kind of go through those as we quickly recap this. Again, trying to make the recap videos a little bit more digestible, and then if you guys want long-term explanations, come over to the stream, twitch.tv/Lawler, where we basically go into the nitty-gritty of everything. So, first things first, looking at the Swiss stage, this was on Friday. These were the 33 best of 5s that went down. All the teams are playing to get 3 wins, and if you do, and you are one of the top 8, you then progress into the playoffs. Those 8 teams are as follows: Space Station and G2 going 3-0. You had Gen.g, Team Axel, and FaZe going 3-1. And then V1, Complexity, and Knights going 3-2. That means no Energy. That means no Furia. That means no Optic, no Shopify, no Dig. There was some pretty interesting things when it came to the results. The big ones, the tiebreakers, and the things that really needed to happen. Space Station basically needed to make top 8. G2 top 8, top 4, and outperforming Energy was important. Gen.g was already in. They were solid, but they, again, still want points to be able to continue through. Axel and the sort of Dig type teams were pretty much out of the running. They needed like to win or top 2 and have a ton of help. Wasn't going to happen. Then FaZe and V1 were both in the same spot, where as long as they got 2 series wins, they were fine. Complexity, same thing kind of as Energy, but needed an even bigger help. They basically needed to get like top 2, top 4, and then have some advantages, but as long as the other teams ahead of them were going to continue to perform, really tough. Knights was in that same part as Axel. The important thing though for Knights and Axel to take away is top 8 is kind of that gatekeep that they are trying to apply. They're a really tough team to get through, and they show a lot of potential. There was a stat put out by Direct as well, stating that teams that score first in their games are like 75% more likely to go on and win, and Knights is the anomaly to that. They do it like 63% of their matches, but still get beat. We'll talk about their match specifically against Space Station in the quarterfinals. Either way, teams, as expected, I would say, move through. V1 always a topsy-turvy. They do drop to 26 Rising and then struggle against some of the other teams, which should not be happening. Their losses come to 26 Rising and Furia, but they do smack Optic. They beat Dig and they beat Seoul. They had kind of a easy way in, even though the matches were far from easy. FaZe looked pretty convincing. Obviously, Space Station, G2, Gen.g. G2 and Gen.g going 3-1 in favor of G2. So G2, the question was, will they bounce back? They do. Other than that, I would say pretty much as expected, with some close matches in some capacity, whether it be Energy losing to Knights. That one with the pressure, I can see that being a thing. If you guys watch my predictions, I talk about that. Furia having a tough fight. They played Shopify, Space Station, V1, Gen.g, and Complexity. Got to win one of those, and they were very close. Complexity and Furia. That was the difference between a chance to still make it into the major. This then gave us our final 8 teams. So if we jump into the playoffs, this went down on Saturday. It was V1 versus Gen.g, G2 versus Complexity, Axel versus FaZe Clan, and Space Station versus Knights. To me, these were pretty predictable on what was going to happen. The one that everybody really focused their attention on was G2 Complexity. Because of the point differential and everything going on, G2 was ahead by 3 points. So if Complexity would have beat G2 in the quarterfinals and made it to the semifinals, they both would have been tied in points and would have had to play a tiebreaker, unless Complexity ended up making it into the grand finals. So that was the only game that had like real stress on it. Everybody else had been locked in. Everybody had their spots secured. So we were just kind of waiting on that. So first game, Gen.g versus version 1. Although it is 4-1, it is a lot closer than it looks. All 1-goal games, 3 overtimes, all in favor of Gen G, which was pretty reminiscent actually to the last time they played in Regional 2, where V1 won the whole thing. Very close series, but all the little small things were going in V1's favor. This time they went in Gen G's. Gen G looked pretty much unstoppable throughout the rest of the weekend. You had G2 versus Complexity. G2 offense was just too much. They did shut out Complexity in the end. And then, without being too rude, FaZe and Space Station was very lopsided. I think everybody had expectations that FaZe and Space Station were going to win, and they did. FaZe did end up losing 2 matches to Team Axel, the first one and I think the 5th one after a timeout. Yeah, it was 2-1 and 3-2 in those wins for Axel, and then Space Station 4 over Knights. Knights, I talked about this, and statistically it's like 63% that they score first. They got a way to hold it down, and they don't. There's glimpses, there's moments for Knights that look really, really good, but they need a complete game. There's a lot of times where they get ahead, they have a lead, and then they just kind of fall apart. Credit to Space Station, though, on bouncing back on a lot of those games. They do 4-0. The last game was an overtime of 5+ minutes before Space Station closes it out. That then brings us into Championship Sunday. Right now, teams are just playing for seeding, trying to give themselves an advantage moving forward. Also helps them with the matchups that they play in the Winter Open and Invitational and all that kind of stuff that they've automatically qualified for. Again, overall RLCS points, every single match does matter. Gen G versus G2 is a 4-0 sweep. Gen G made G2 look like they're playing BDS again in the World Championship. It was pretty dang one-sided. Gen G just, everything is clicking. The ability to find each other in passing lanes, shots are consistent, good aggressive challenges, minimal hesitancy. Nally talked about this a lot in his interview about how they are very critical of each other. They hold each other accountable. And it's very interesting to see that because you did see an article with Sathu, the coach of G2, come out recently and talk about, hey, I had to be pretty aggressive with the guys. I had to be kind of the bad guy and talk about the urgency and the importance. And I think that's really what it comes down to. That conversation is more so about making sure we make the major and holding them accountable, making past top 8 and all that kind of stuff, which is definitely paid off. So G2 by no means played poorly, but Gen G was just, their ceiling was so much higher. They looked like the clear favorites to win the whole thing. On the other side, FaZe and Space Station, FaZe just kind of outclassed a lot of really clutch saves at moments, but overall their offense was just too overwhelming for Space Station. They did hold Space Station only to 3 goals, which is pretty scary. So FaZe lockdown, as always. Seems like they have figured out Space Station's aggression, and they know how to really work that midfield. Their pressure and some of the shots in the infields that they're getting with Mist are just impeccable. So congratulations. They do take game 2 though for Space Station, 1-0, but other than that, it is all FaZe. Pretty convincing on that one. We then get into the grand finals, and while I say it was convincing for FaZe, I personally didn't see anything too crazy that was like overwhelming odds. Still heavily on the side of Gen G, and the first game starts off with a Brazil 7-1 in favor of FaZe. FaZe does adjust well, and they keep it within 1, but at that point, it's too little, too late. 1-goal games. Again, if a couple things go in their favor, I forget what game exactly it was. It might have been game 2, maybe game 3. There was a shot top right that I think might have been missed, who ends up pinching it out, and it was like, those are the types of things that Gen G was doing. It was just one thing after another, consistent offense. Very happy that Gen G is in North America, because having to play them at the majors scares me. You saw at the very end, after Gen G does 4-0, they sit down and have an interview, and Nally talks about, hey, of all the teams to expect out of Europe, K-Corp, I want to play them. I want to play the best, and K-Corp is definitely looking like one of those teams. So very excited to see what happens next week with the Europeans and who are the 5 they're going to be sending over, because NA has been going through the gauntlet. In Gen G, I put a tweet out about their storyline and how awesome it is. The fact that they had 2 players from World Championship teams decide to move to NA without scrimming previously together. There was a chance that apparently Jack almost retired because of the contract stuff that was going on. They decided to pick up Chronic, who again has shown a lot of talent, but really hasn't gotten that chance to play on a top tier team just yet. And second place, first place. That's absolutely incredible. So a lot of credit, and it seems like the 4th place curse is now on Space Station this season. So again, FaZe trying to get past constant top 4s. They have a win and a 2nd place, so congratulations to them. V1 1st place into 8th places, and so on and so forth. So overall, your rankings, and this is what they're going to be seeded for the major. You've got at first Gen G, 2nd you've got FaZe Clan, 3rd you've got V1, 4th you've got Space Station by 1 point, and then you've got G2 at 5th. Those are your 5 reps going to Rotterdam here in a month, and I'm excited to see how that one plays. I am personally very excited to see how Chronic does on LAN alongside Jack. Jack has been kind of hit and miss at lands at sometimes, but the motivation, the way that Nolly has stepped up, their mentality seems to be in a pretty dang good place. So a lot of confidence behind Gen G. And maybe Jack lives up to his word and says, hey, we're going to take a spot from NA and then we're going to be international spies and throw our matches so EU gets more spots at Worlds. Obviously, all jokes, but should be a lot of fun. So that is what I have for your European kind of introduction, as well as things to look forward to. This whole week, as I mentioned, is going to be Europe focused, just like NA was last week, talking about tiebreaker scenarios and playoff scenarios to make the major. I'll have those for you. Thank you to Direct as always. I will make sure to cover predictions and all that kind of stuff. And then I've got some more heavily produced content coming out with the month break. So between that and a couple of the casting events that I'll be out of town for, it's going to be a busy week, busy month. So that's on top of it being a busy year. So either way, if you guys have any additional questions, more detailed, maybe I'll do some replay analysis and breakdowns for y'all. Stop by the stream, twitch.tv/Lawler. Stream every day but Tuesday and Sunday unless I'm out of town. And hopefully some more heavily produced content for you guys in the near future. But that is going to do it for today's video. As always, like, subscribe, let me know in your comments down below. Were you surprised by the Gen G dominance, or is there another team that caught your attention? Any big moments? Always happy to hear what you guys have to say. But that does it for today. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.